Getting flying to your 2D platformer is fairly easy. So let's say that we got this prototype right here, with this tile map with colliders, and this helicopter that's composed of multiple sprites, a box collider, and a rigid body. And as soon as I hold left, I want my helicopter to lift off and start flying towards my mouse cursor. Therefore, the first thing we need to do is to detect our mouse cursor, i.e. whether it's pressed at all and where it's located. Finding out whether the left mouse button is held down at the moment, you can do by accessing the input system in an if statement, and then calling the getButton function with the fire1 string, which also works for mobile. And by the way, you can get the finished version of this script for free in the description. So now that we know that the player is holding down the left mouse button, let's find out where the cursor is located. And this you can theoretically achieve with input.mousePosition. However, this will give you the cursor's position in pixels, starting from the top left corner. So you need to somehow convert this measure into units within Unity. And the way you can do that in your 2D game is by calling the screen-to-world-point function of the camera. But now, since this method is orienting at the camera's position, our Z position is set to -10. So the last thing that we need to do is to invert this by resetting the Z position to 0. So let's find out whether this one works by printing our calculated position in the console. And there we go. So the next thing you'll need to do is to rotate the helicopter towards the mouse cursor. And this is also where you're gonna need the mouse position, which you just learned how to calculate. And this you can achieve by setting the rotation of the transform to a new value, and that will be the result of the logrotation method with a forward vector in the first parameter and the difference of the transform's position and the target position. But as you can see, by doing so, you're gonna rotate your entire helicopter towards the cursor, which includes its sprites. And one way for you to fix that is to create a parent for your helicopter, and by rotating the parent's transform instead. This gives us the awesome possibility to reset the rotation of our helicopter itself by setting transform rotation to identity. And as you can see here, by clicking right here, the helicopter's parent's transform is indeed rotating towards the point I just clicked, but our sprites remain like this all the same. Finally, let's move the player towards the mouse cursor by calling translate on its parent and by moving it towards the downside, multiplied by delta time, and a speed variable that you can set to your own needs. And one more thing, since you probably don't want your helicopter to strangely escalate around the cursor, let's better check whether it's still got a minimum distance between itself and the target position. And I think you can calmly choose 0.1 here. And I suppose that you also don't want your helicopter to fall down when flying, so I think that's also a good time to set the gravity scale of the helicopter to 0 at the very start of your input scope, and to reset its velocity as well. You need to get access to your rigid body before all of this though, and don't forget to add this else statement to your input scope so you can set the gravity back to normal as soon as we stop flying. And now as soon as I click left, this is what it looks like so far. What do you think of it? Well, if you ask me, I think this guy is still missing some kind of animations, so let's take a look at these next. And also, if you don't want to do all the other things by yourself, you can find this entire demo project in the description. So I've created an idle animation and a flying animation that basically makes these two parts rotate, and most importantly, I've made these two transitions between them that depend on this flying bool parameter. And now in your input scope, you need to set the name of your flight transition to true, and if there's no input, you need to set it back to false again. And please feel free to just write them like that in your script, and also make sure to assign your animator beforehand like this whatsoever. What these two lines won't do in your script is they won't flip your entire helicopter if you want to fly to the left. So here's one way to fix that. As soon as your target position is located at the left side of your parent's position, you can just set the transform of your helicopter to a flipped version that you could set up like this. Just make your flip scale your normal scale, but then invert the x-axis. And there you got your helicopter animated. So let's go into safe grounds again. And there you go. There is one more thing that I wanted to show you today, and that is how to accumulate speed the longer you're flying around. And this you can do by incrementing your speed variable at the end of your input scope by a certain increment times the delta time. And you probably don't want to raise it infinitely, so better check whether it's past a certain threshold, and if so, just set it to that threshold. And also, you don't want to somehow store your helicopter speed, so please make sure to set the speed back to 0 on the very first frame that you make your input. And this you can do by using the getButtonDown method instead of the normal getButton1. And you can even check whether your helicopter has collided with like some of the housings by just putting the onCollisionEnter 2D method somewhere in your script with exactly these parameters. And then if your speed passed your critical level, then you can decrease your helicopter's health or hull integrity and whatnot. This means if I slow down here a bit, like that, everything's gonna be fine. But if I land onto the building with full speed, well, landing's gonna hurt. And maybe you can see this water down here that the city is covered in. This one has a trigger collider, and the awesome thing that you can do with that, for instance, let's say you want the water to somehow manipulate your speed, then you can check whether you entered a trigger zone. If so, check if it's the water that you triggered with, and then if your helicopter is too slow, make it even slower inside the water, or if you surpassed the critical level, make your helicopter shoot right through it like a rocket or whatever. And this is everything I wanted to show you today. If you like 2D platformers, I got a whole playlist full of it that you can find right here. And have a nice day, and I'll see you soon.